definitely the most difficult and challenging, confusing, frustrating thing you could ever go through. Just because even if you have a difficult time as a person, at least you can express it or get some support, or people know what you're going through. There's already a lot of context and foundation around it. That's an immense amount of safety ground that you have no idea is really there. So here you're going through this loss of self, loss of identity in every way possible, so thoroughly. And the only way that can happen is when you're in complete free fall. You don't have even the littlest thing to hold on to. And I'm not saying that there isn't an attempt to hold on to certain things consciously or unconsciously, because it's just too much sometimes. So that's fine. It's totally fine. You know, it makes sense that it could feel just too much for the body, because it's just never handled so much uncertainty, you know? So I definitely have there's an understanding that can happen, and it's fine. Yeah, I do sometimes feel like this dream crusher in a way, because you have to tell people the truth in a way. I don't have to do anything, but there is a love for this as well, to point out that what you're holding on to is illusory. That imaginary attachment to whatever it is, your mom, a spiritual practice, a spiritual path, my partner. Obviously, it doesn't need to be confronted all at once. Maybe sometimes that can happen, but you'll be okay without that. And you can feel through the discomfort of the loss of that, the loss of the energetic idea and attachment of that thing. And you'll see that there's more freedom beyond it, when you go through the discomfort and the fear of losing that thing. And in life, we're forced to feel through that a lot of the time. Like when we break up with someone, you have to mend, you have to like feel the loneliness. You have to just get through it. And sometimes we do it in extremely unhealthy ways by just distracting ourselves to the max, getting into the next relationship right away. Or we can really see that it's okay to be alone. It's okay to feel the loneliness. It's okay. It's understandable that you might feel extra lonely during that time. And it's difficult. It's definitely heartbreaking. And so that's what happens over and over, we get rejected from that job and it stings and we feel through it. It's okay. It doesn't mean anything about you. Life is just like that. Things come and go, but that's not actually really what's happening anyways, because that's all an interpretation. But I understand that it might really feel like that's what's happening. So the emotions are more intense, and there needs to be an allowance for that, an okayness with it, because that's how life unfolds. And eventually, perhaps there can be this drastic or gentle shift that seems to be taking place, where your will, motivation, drive, determination, ambition to have it your way, to get what you want, for me to be happy, for me to feel safe, perhaps that diminishes. And there can be this shift that takes place where it's no longer my will, it's just life. And then even the idea of it being life's will or God's will, that is so obvious that that's just the concept. Because the interpretation that something's actually happening and that something actually has will, that this is actually a body moving in the world, in time and space, all of it just collapses, all of it. And again, maybe it's not all at once. There could just be, the outer layers of this bubble just pop and pop and pop until it just becomes so clear, the thorough, illusory nature of how I was living before was so fake, so pretend, so made up, so arrogant, so innocent. And I thought I was right and wrong. I believed that. I thought others were right and wrong. I believed it. I felt better than others. I felt worse than others. I felt like I needed to follow another. I felt like I needed to take down another. All of these opposites. It's a roller coaster, and it's never ending. It does it with everything. And you think that you're getting somewhere. But here, where this apparent shift takes place, a total energetic one, it's like completely, identification of the body just is going. Then the seeking is seen as okay. There is no seeker. There is nothing behind it, actually. It is life itself appearing that way, appearing as this actually more intense neurotic behavior than ever before. Because this is all interpretation. I actually, it's gonna be different for everyone, so all I can do is speak from how it appeared here. It just felt like all of the suffering of my past, or what I felt was mine, and how hurt I was, and how much suffering I carried throughout this whole lifetime, it just came to a head, and it was so obvious how much suffering there was. So obvious. And it was like, of course separation would feel this horrible, feel this burdensome, and how much responsibility I felt for everything, It wasn't just myself or some people in my life. It was, everything. Responsible for the thoughts, for the feeling, for my mood, for what I said, for how I acted, for the decisions I made, for the wrong turns I did, for the right things I did, but couldn't even give myself the respect and love and, you know, just appreciating that stuff. Obviously, everyone's dynamic or inner world or way of relating to oneself, which isn't really happening, but you know, there's just relating that happens when there is a sense of here-ness. So that way of relating to everything for you might be totally different. Your story, your narrative, the narrative that's going on in your mind is so different. But it's all birthed from the same. It's all birthed from me. I'm separate from everything. I'm here, and the world is out there. So anyways, during this dissolving, the so-called neuroses and the reasons why you suffered or seeked so much in all of these different ways just becomes more and more clear, and it's revealed to you, but not to you as an entity or a thing or anything in particular. It is just revealed. The truth is just revealed over and over in deeper and deeper layers, and you get to see the absolute insanity and suffering of humanity. How crazy it is to be a human. There were so many thoughts here of just like, it would have been better if I was just a cat. You know, a simple life. No identification and no mental torture. But now I can say that it's such a gift. It's so beautiful to be able to go through the depths of darkness, of absolute darkness. I went through death. I went through my own death to see that there was never a death, to see that there was never my life, to see that I was never... I never was. And to really say that, to know that, to be what is remarkable. And only when I express it like this am I like, wow, that's really beautiful. But I never think about it, because that thinking reality just isn't real, you know? It's not needed, it's not important, but it can be used freely. It's just a way of the body functioning, and it's fine. There's no suppressing of it, there's no detaching from it. It just is. It's another, you know, God, it's so hard to use words. It's just another arising. It's just the same as everything else. A thought is no different than anything else. And we put so much attention to it, understandably so. I mean, it's probably, you know, the reason why we suffer so much. So I get it. And there's so much out there of how to deal with thoughts, how to manipulate them, how to stop them from coming up more, or how to quiet the mind, or it has nothing really to do with that. Like, of course it feels nicer if the mind is more quiet sometimes. And sure, great, do practices for that, but know that that's never getting you anywhere. That's not an answer in any way. It's the thoughts were never the problem. But again, I don't want you to I don't know, this is just a description. Because I can also say, like, there was, you know, there was a lot of annoyance with some of the thoughts that were arising during this dissolving, because it was very existential and it would come up here and there. It was sometimes sporadic, sometimes it lasted a while and I couldn't stop it. I had no control. There was just a death going on, an energetic death, and the mind is just an interpreting machine or whatever, you know? And what it was saying was that it didn't want to be here, which is so understandable, but it's very alarming when I've also never really experienced that, you know? Maybe 10 or more years ago, I experienced some of that, but it was from a very different place. Which was challenging in its own way. But here it was good to hear that actually that's quite normal. When you're going through an energetic death of you, even though it's imaginary, yeah, why wouldn't the mind say these things, you know? And so as I was like, I wasn't doing it, but you know, as there was this processing of going through deeper and deeper layers of the past, of the conditioning that was here, and seeing so thoroughly how little control I actually had in it, but blamed myself and desperately tried to change it, and you know, on the surface level, and maybe it appeared to make some changes here and there, maybe it appeared to help, and it also got me really down because I would make the same mistakes and blame myself all over again. But overall there was a learning that was happening anyways. But like when this is actually all dissolving and it's just shown like there was never any control in this, because how deep, so loud. Wait. So how deep, you know, this so-called conditioning goes is ridiculous, because it's absolutely energetic. Okay, so then you can say, like, as it was unwinding, you know, then it was shown like these are all energetic patterns. They're not even labelable. You can't even say exactly what it is. And, you know, these people are just labeling things as if it's an actual real thing, as if it's an actual real pattern that's happening that way. It's so then, you know, terms like people pleasing or like no, what are some other terms? Like narcissism or whatever. Like, they started to not really make sense, because they're all labels. All people actually, you know, you can probably see that they actually have a nice side, you know, and sometimes they do extremely harmful things because they're extremely contracted and had so much suffering and, you know, have done a lot of harm to you or others. And I'm not excusing that at all, but how does that make that a narcissist? How does that make another person a people pleaser? Like, it's so ridiculous that we label actions like that, as if actions are an actual thing, as if people are actual things that we can compartmentalize them and know what they are and think that we have control in unraveling that whole thing. And when you really see that you are not there and life is just happening and you have no control, then it's fucking ridiculous that we blame and pride ourselves for all of this ridiculousness when it's all life happening. Even when you were in pain and it gave you the motivation to finally fucking say no, that was life itself. That wasn't you doing it. I used to think that, yeah, people pleasing is horrible, but at least I'm not as bad as a narcissist. Like, that's a thought, that's a position, that's complete illusion. That's in the illusion, in the belief that your whole story and other people's stories are actually real, and your opinion of what's happening, your interpretation and perception is actual truth. And just because other people may agree to that doesn't make it true. It's all made up. And people are so scared that they will follow and just regurgitate the same knowledge, same thing. Until so many people say the same thing that you think that it's actual truth. That's literally how it goes. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying it needs to change, because it's probably not. That's part of how humans function. It might be nice or prefer that it would be less delusional though. But the fact that maybe a year or sense of time is so off that it might have been longer than that. I could not have understood any of this. Not understood, because you really do have to go through this yourself to see the immense made-upness of everything. And it's so unfamiliar, so it's scary, you know? It's, how do I make sense of anything? How do I process anything? And yet it aids in the process of processing things, ironically, because then you're just able to feel the pure emotion of whatever was there, whatever effects of separation that were there just releases. You just cry, you just feel sad for a long time, and finally you're not like, I mean, there could be a sense of like, when is this gonna end and stuff like that, but there's a sense that you're not in control of that, of how the body feels. And I'm not saying you can't do things that might feel good for it, if there's energy to do that. But that's where the switch happens of, you see that shit, the body can take care of itself. And you know, I was so desperate to take care of it or harm it, and yeah, it's just so much manipulation that was happening. And it's definitely confusing and frustrating during the switch of this, you know, where you don't know how the body's gonna function, because this is so new to you. Everything is new. And that illusion is so convincing, so real when it's there, that you literally thought you were taking care of the body. And now as this switch is happening where your will is just dissolving, and then you don't know what's coming, because that's always how it's been, but you thought you knew what was coming before. And it gave you safe ground, imaginary safe ground. And now you just don't know. But what a fucking relief to see that the body is so capable of taking care of itself, and it naturally doesn't harm itself. And again, this might take time, because as the momentum of seeking, the ramifications of seeking are actually just coming up, sometimes more full on than more full on than before, because it wasn't fully allowed to just be before. So it might appear that you know, the body's getting more unhealthy, or you're not able to function in the same way as before. You're not as able to exercise all the time, or eat healthy all the time, or go walking all the time, or socialize all the time, or it's just a depleting of some of that stuff in all these different ways, and it could be alarming. So basically, oops. So basically, what I'm saying is that what gets revealed is just the simultaneous, absolute innocence of everything, and the complete arrogance of everything. Well, the complete arrogance of me, the illusion of me. And goddamn, is it a strong ass illusion, you know? You know, we just go through so many hoops to try and find the answer, you know? I was desperate for an answer over 10 years ago. Desperate. And I went through all of these avenues, all of these ways, and yeah, it exhausted the seeking, or it at least told me that this wasn't it either. Maybe it gave me relief for the moment, or I don't know. Yeah. It just seemed to keep me distracted for a little longer and give me hope for a little longer. But then I moved on to the next, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And then you finally see that there's nowhere to go, no practice to do, no path to follow. No one has the answer. Like, to get to that place, not always and not all the time, but you really do go through the ringer. You've seen it all, and then you see that no one knows shit. And neither do you, but that's part of the freedom. So, you know. Yeah. But if there's a hearing of this and then you're like, oh, no one knows shit, then I could just fuck around. That's the mind. That's the person interpreting. That's not what I mean at all. There's no energy to fuck around. There's no energy to take this on as another belief or idea. Just let it sink in.